Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Strategy Game Podcast. I'm super excited today because we have one of my favorites, Jean Roberts, here, and she's going to talk all things marketing and strategy. And if I had to appoint another person to do the exact same work that I do, it would be her because I think she thinks a lot like I do in terms of just strategy translation, and I really love it. So I feel like we're on the same page a lot, which is why this year it's been so good to be able to work together more. So Jean, welcome to the podcast. We're super excited to have you.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I'm really thrilled to be here.
And why don't we just start by telling, our story first. I always love hearing you tell about just how we met and how this all came about because it's just really crazy. It's a crazy
It
journey.
is crazy. Yeah, such a journey it has been, that is for sure. Well, we have mutual friends that I think have in their own ways been very important in both of our families' lives. So I met someone that ended up being your husband's roommate in college, right? And so Matt Hignite and I went to high school together and got to know each other there. And when he moved back home from PBA, he brought along with him Laura, his now wife, who has become one of my very best friends. So at their wedding in Florida, in Key West, we met. So it was an amazing destination wedding, and I went there with friends and just by chance met you, and I think we just realized right away that we had a lot of the same career goals and like you said, strategic thought process. And so it was 10 years ago now, which is crazy.
That is crazy. I cannot believe it's been that long. And so since then, tell us what you've been doing and how your journey has been a winding road, right? Everybody's journey is a winding road. So how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I always laugh when people ask me this question because looking back at it, I see the connections. At the time, people were like, you're making these really weird, seemingly random career transitions. And for me now, it makes a lot of sense. You can connect the dots looking backwards, right?
That's perfect.
So I studied consumer psychology. It was a family and consumer science major, but I focused on consumer psychology in college. And I've always been fascinated by how people make decisions and why they make them, what motivates them. And so that was one of the things I really liked studying. And at the time, I thought I was going to be in retail my whole life or supporting retail stores in terms of how they laid out their floors and the marketing that they set out to motivate people to buy a product. I graduated around the time that our country was experiencing a pretty big recession. And for me, it didn't sit ethically to be motivating people to buy things that they didn't need and in some cases couldn't afford. So I shifted a bit to social work. So I worked in social work with a organization in town that is still near and dear to my heart. I'm up in Worcester, Ohio, which is near Cleveland. And this particular organization helps families that are experiencing crisis, whether that be from domestic violence or someone in their family in inpatient or outpatient treatment for addiction disease. And my role there was to help establish a housing family sufficiency program where they were basically learning the life skills or relearning the life skills that they might have learned either under the control of an abusive situation or under the influence of substances. We were teaching them, how to live life in a responsible manner, how to budget, how to find an apartment, all those things. And it was a lot of still decision making. It was a lot of just like psychology and decision making and how does that happen and what motivates people. Um, and it was also the business side of starting up a program. I've always loved getting things started and rolling and figuring out what are the operational efficiencies that need to happen to make something successful and repeatable, right? A process that's repeatable. So I really enjoyed that. I then was offered a job doing a similar thing in a vocational high school, working specifically. There's 50% of their students went on to college, but 50% went directly into the workforce. So working with those students on work ethic development, the importance of passing drug screens, the importance of soft skills that are needed at an employment standpoint. So it was kind of a lot of the things that I had been previously doing, kind of all culminating together there in that role. And I had a really wonderful experience there working with some awesome young people that just motivated me. There's nothing like seeing these kids that are in school and learning a trade and are so excited about it and so excited about their future. And so that was really fun. Um, and then after that, I started working at a digital advertising agency, digital marketing agency, learned a lot about search engine optimization, website building. And so there I was kind of building out their client services side for social media. So again, it seemed like a huge jump at the time, but looking back, it's making a lot of sense. um, yeah, and then was asked by a higher ed institution to kind of work on their annual giving program, which was, you know, blending communications and philanthropy, which is sometimes a difficult thing to do. Um, so all throughout that time, I was doing a consulting business kind of on the side, and I was finding that over time, that was really where my passion lies, is working with businesses, small businesses, oftentimes nonprofits, to try to blend all of this together and figure out, well, what is digital strategy, what is digital marketing, what is customer experience, and how does that work in a way that helps them be successful as a business and or as a nonprofit and make a bigger impact.
That's so good. I love that. It's so fun hearing that because I don't know if I've heard all of those details in one piece. I've heard pieces of them at different moments, but now I can see where all of those skills are transferable. And I think the blend of them is so important because that's really made you like who you are today and then like where you are today, right? So the basis for your own consulting organization, which is really amazing. And, I think we're on the same page a lot because we talk about this importance of identity-based strategy, which is like really knowing yourself and it's really knowing what your brand represents and stands for, and then how that translates into a strategy, not just like a vision or a mission on a poster on the wall, right? There's so much
Right.
more than that right now. And I think a lot of organizations, the older way of doing things might have been more that poster on the wall that sits there and it's great and everybody knows it's there, but now it's actually like, I think that as a culture, as generations are coming, new generations are coming, like they want more, they want more than that. And so I think that we're just working towards a place where identity-based strategy is really becoming more and more important because people want that transparency and they want to see the translation that you've done that work of actually translating those things that are on a wall into people's lives, right? And so a lot of people get stuck in the translation process. Tell me about what you see in terms of that with your clients and how they get stuck or where they get stuck in translating that into the marketing piece that you help them with, because you really help them with that digital marketing strategy.
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, I'm going to put it back on something that I learned from you. I think when you always say peeling back the onion, I think that is where people get stuck. I think it's easy to look at a mission or a vision on the wall, and oftentimes that isn't the core desire of the people they're serving or their customers or their clients. And so I think peeling back the onion and trying to help them get towards what is the actual problem we're trying to solve, or what is the core desire of the customer or the donor, or whatever that audience is. I think if you don't first start there, it becomes really easy to get stuck in creating this one size fits all marketing plan that is very mission and vision focused instead of service focused, right? So missions and visions, I think by nature oftentimes are very much service focused, but in terms of how you actually apply them, it's one thing to say something, that's something else to do it. So I see the biggest hiccup is not doing that identity-based strategy work to get to the core desire first. And then I would say the second hiccup is creating a one size fits all, that they're just expecting anybody that's coming to us is here for the exact same reason, and thinking that marketing plan is going to reach everybody, right? And it's going to work for everybody, and not realizing that they have likely at least 3, if not 4, persona groups that are really there for different reasons or are looking for different things out of the organization or the business. And so I would say, if we're trying to be all things to everybody with one communication plan, it's never going to be defined, and it's going to be really hard for it to translate into something that's actionable and effective.
That is so true. So good. Peeling back the layers of the onion. Okay. So that reminds me of, in the strategy masterclass, we also talk about, that's a great analogy for the 5 whys framework. So that Ash Mariah talks about in Lean Stack, where if there's something on the surface, right? There's something on the surface, and like your customer base, like a one size fits all approach, you need to peel back the layers of that onion by asking why 5 times and writing down the answers. It seems so silly, but it's such a powerful exercise. And you will uncover more than you know. And you can use this for anything. You can use this for business challenges, like, okay, well, why is that a challenge? Well, why? Well, why? And like slowly you'll peel back the layers to get to the root of the issue, because if it's like putting a band-aid on something versus getting to the root cause and really bringing like healing and change in that way, right from the ground up. So in all of the issues that we have, I mean, this is personal or professional, peeling back those layers of the onion to get to the root instead of putting band-aids on it is always better. And I feel like with your approach with marketing strategy, as well as the work that we're doing on the pre-work side, I think we really take that approach. It's like that one size fits all just doesn't work anymore. Things are too complex, right? Even our digital marketing landscape is too complex. There are too many channels. There are too many ways to reach people. And I feel like in our mastermind, we talk about this a lot with the entrepreneurs, is there's just overwhelm around this. So talk to me a little bit about with your clients, how, like what the overwhelm is that you see, what their greatest angst is, and then how you solve that for them. Like, how do you help them solve that problem?
Oh, that's such a good question. Overwhelm is such a good way to describe it when it comes to digital strategy. I think regardless, it's funny because I think it's easy for folks to say based on their age, like, I either feel like I get technology or I feel like, oh, I don't understand technology at all and I just want someone to do it for me. Yeah. What I find is they understand technology very well. All of us are at a point now where we have to use it in our lives. What they don't understand is, where is my audience and what platforms are they using? And the thought of having to learn all of the potential platforms is what becomes overwhelming, instead of realizing, all right, we've done the persona work, we've done the identity-based strategy work that gives you a very clear understanding of exactly who your audience is. And then I think that next step of, for me, it's been watching this ecosystem mapping process, where they walk through, where is my target audience going during the day? What does a day in their life look like? When you ask the question that way, it becomes a little bit easier to digest, instead of, well, what channels do we need to be on? Right? That becomes super overwhelming because you're like, I don't even know where to start. What channel should I be considering? What am I missing? But I think if you start it from, picture somebody in your head that is connected to your organization or your business and walk me through a day in their life, right? I think that becomes just a much easier, less overwhelming way to process through where you need to be in terms of digital marketing and what channels you need to pay attention to.
That is so good. And I love that because it's humanizing the process, right? So I think like with the rise and the evolution of technology, there was this period of time, and we're still in it, but of it's like we're dehumanizing things, right? Where the process just doesn't feel human anymore. And I think bringing back this as the core of it, and really just, hey, walk me through a day in the life of your client, your different types of clients. Like, do you know them? Do you really see them? Do you hear them? And really then going from there. And then it's up to us to actually translate that into channels. That's the part that I love, because it's not only it's really what I see is the mindset shift in our client, where they go from thinking about their business and how they're going to drum up more business, right? And push people to them, but it becomes a pull when they start to then instead serve them and think through how they're going to interact with them genuinely where they already go. And then it becomes like a pull to them, right? So it's just that dynamic. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, where it actually just is a really important mindset shift for the leaders and the teams that we work with as well, because they're able to start thinking about who they serve instead of how they're going to fix or scale their business.
Yeah, it's focusing on the relationship, right? And I think what we do gives people almost a breath of relief, like immediately, because it's realizing, okay, this is going to allow me to get back to why I love doing what I'm doing, which is providing a service or a product, that, they at the time of entering into that business or that organization felt was really needed. And I think it becomes easy to forget why we do what we do when we get stuck in all these little things that we need to do to continue to drive revenue. And we forget what we're there for in the first place, which is really to serve people, in any way, shape, or form, right? And so I think that this process really allows business owners and leaders, to just be authentic and relate to people and make it feel like it's not a forced marketing plan, but it's really talking about who they are and why they do what they do, instead of, I know I have to be on Facebook, and I know I have to be on Instagram, and I know I have to be on LinkedIn. How do I do it? It's like, no, let's have an authentic conversation and share what makes you different and what makes your organization so great.
Yeah, that is so good. I love that. And I feel like you're really good at calling those things out in people too. So it's the gift of, I think, intuition and perception. I think all of those things are really important in terms of extracting those things, right? So the phrase extracting the gold always comes to mind. Like, we want to pull from many different places and extract the wisdom, extract those important pieces that we need to put something together. And so, speaking of that, I feel like this is a perfect lead in to the marketing engine. This is what
Yeah.
we're talking about here. So, if you're liking this conversation, we're going to tell you about actually what we are working on and what we're really doing for clients, and where you can start, and some top tips for you to just be able to really develop your genuine marketing campaign without feeling like it's overwhelming, a burden, or forced, because I think that can really be stressful. So, and this came from a place of wanting to lift this off of business owners and leaders of nonprofits and entrepreneurs' shoulders, because it's heavy. And so we kept thinking and talking about, what are all the pieces that are needed in a digital marketing strategy? Because, there's the pre-work, right? And this is the work that I do, which is the phase one, which is identity-based strategy. So we're looking at your personas. And if you don't know like what personas are, just very simply, they're just the people, the different people groups that you serve. So if you think of your clients and how they're different, that's how you're going to segment or split up your audience based on like their core desires, because they might be different and they might prioritize them differently. So we really unpack what that looks like and develop like a quote from their mouth, which in my opinion is the most important part, because we're really speaking like they would speak. And so then we can speak back to them in that language. That's how it translates. And then we develop the journey map. And this is in phase one, the pre-work phase. And that takes them through the entire journey, the customer nurturing journey, from the first time they hear about you all the way through the end when they become an advocate or a raving fan. And that ignites genuine word of mouth strategy. So we don't let the goal is for there not to be any gaps in that process. So it's all connected, and they're led through a natural process, the customer nurturing journey. So once that work is done, then we're able to take that and start translating it into campaign themes and channels and all of that good stuff. So Jean, tell us what that phase 2 and 3 look like in the marketing engine.
Sure. So, I mean, one of the things that I think, so just, I'm going to start laughing because just yesterday when we were working with one of our clients on this, it was so fun to watch, Lawrence, they're reading the quotes from their mouth from a persona standpoint, and they're on mute and they're talking to each other about like, oh yeah, they're picturing a client or a person, of a customer of their business as Lauren's reading these personas off, which is what we want, right? Because we know we hit the money, like, okay, they're already thinking of people and how this goes. And for me, it's so exciting because it's so easy then to translate and choose channels, based on these really clear people that we have in mind. So one of the things that I love is taking the ecosystem map and the customer journey and looking at where are those gaps in the process and how do we fill in. And Lauren, as you always call it, adding elements of surprise and delight,
Yes.
into the process, which is so fun. Yes, I mean, it's, we can all think of a business that has really great customer service that we love interacting with because they did something that drew our attention or shocked us in a good way. And so that's fun for me. I know to brainstorm with you about where do we add those in. But in terms of translating the strategy and the campaign themes, it becomes so much easier to figure out what you need to focus on when you know what the core desires are, right? So if I know that, so I'll use a nonprofit example. If I know that the donor cares very much about, let's say it's a nonprofit that serves children, and they care a lot because of maybe a tough home life they had when they were growing up, and they want to make sure that, they worked with an organization when they were younger, and they want to pay it forward, to make sure that children that might be growing up in a situation like they did, have access to these types of organizations that can walk alongside them and provide mentorship and a sense of safety. So that could be one donor's motivation, right? Whereas another one could be, it's a corporation and they want their potential customers to understand that they're invested in the community. So it's not necessarily that they care as much. It's not that they don't care, but it's not that their main motivation is actually the mission of the organization. Their main motivation is that their customers know that they're investing back into their own community. So if we were to send communication to a corporate donor that's speaking all about, a very specific child, it might not be as impactful if we make that donor look like the hero, right? And we say, your investment in our community has allowed us to do blah, blah, blah. So they're really small tweaks. But that's my favorite part, is looking at those personas and those channels and figuring out, what do we need to do to speak to this person in a way that's going to motivate them to convert, right? Or motivate to drive revenue. And
Yes.
I think that's where a lot of companies get really stuck, because they choose one funnel, right? It's one funnel, it's one string of communication. It's a one size fits all, be everything to everybody for their whole reason for being there, instead of being very specific. It takes a little bit more work, but putting it into a repeatable process that's a template that then you can continue to fill in, making sure you're hitting all of those themes that are important to all of your personas, and making sure if I open up your social media feed that I'll find something that speaks to me. I think that's the fun part.
Absolutely. And it does take more work. And I think that's where a lot of people stop. And I get it, because it's overwhelming. It's so much work. And it's not that it's so much work. It's that it's very emotionally draining work in a way. And that's why I
Mhm.
love to do it for other people, because when it's your own, I think it can be emotionally draining to think through or decipher really who your people are. But from an outside lens looking in, it's oftentimes a lot easier and it moves a lot faster. So, and I
The
love
other
that.
key piece about that, I think, is the fact that when you have somebody outside looking in, you're not using internal terminology that
Yes.
you've gotten so used to using, right? I mean, I always laugh, especially when I wear, and like, all the love to the nonprofit customers and
Yeah.
clients out there, and professionals out there. But nonprofits are notorious for having a million acronyms and terms of things that are just jargon. I know every kind of industry has their own, but I love when I see them in marketing, and I laugh because it's like, no one knows what that means. And clearly you didn't have somebody step outside and review your process, right? And so I think, that's the other huge benefit to having somebody externally even just look over or audit what your plan is, to be able to point out those things like, okay, from an outsider's perspective, it doesn't work in your world every day. I would not know what that meant, right?
Right. Exactly. Yes. And I think for everybody listening, here's something really practical you can actually do today, like right now. You can bring up your website or any social media channel as if you are a client or a donor, or have a couple of your clients or donors bring up your website. Just call them up. Hey, walk through this with me for 15 minutes and tell me what you see. Tell me what you're thinking. Like, give me feedback on the process, and you will learn so much about your journey map and where it needs to go and where the holes are, the gaps are, and things that you need to shift around. That's something so practical and tangible that you can do at any point. And that's why throughout the marketing engine process, we actually have an audit process built in. But first, I want to touch on phase 3. So if you guys didn't listen to last week's podcast, we had Jenna on here, and she is amazing. And she actually handles the SEO, which is phase 3 of our process. So we'll translate it, we'll get all of the channels running and executed. And then she will actually run the SEO for the companies and the nonprofits that gets them the traffic that they need, to be able to drive those conversions. Because we know that, typically it's so funny. You can have, it's the chicken or the egg problem, right? So you can have the problem of like traffic, but you're not converting because you don't have the right landing pages or the right like language or channels that's speaking to them. Or it can be the opposite. You have all your funnels defined, you've got your nurturing journey great, but you don't have enough traffic to be able to get the conversion rate that you need. So that's why this stuff is tricky. There's a lot involved. And so that's, you know, when we were thinking about the marketing engine, that's really what we were thinking about. Like, okay, what's the whole process look like? How can we take that off of people's shoulders? And then the last piece is really that set it and forget it piece. Jean, what do you see in, you know, the industry that you're in with the set it and forget it versus how we're doing it with the audit?
Man, I think that's the secret sauce of the marketing engine. I see people that, you know, write their plan out at the beginning of a fiscal year. And in some cases, because it tends to be quieter at the beginning of a fiscal year, they'll write all their content right then, right? And, you know, if we've learned anything from 2020, it's that you could have to have a complete plot change, you know, with no warning. And so it became really obvious to me, those companies who had written everything with no indication of what was coming, and they just left it there, right? And so I think it becomes inauthentic. It's not speaking to the moment. And I think when you set it and forget it, you're not going back and looking at what's working, what's not working. Did we hit the mark on messaging? One of the things that I love about search engine optimization, and I'm sure that Jenna touched on this in the last episode, but I think one of the things that is so fascinating to me about it is there's so many companies out there that that talk a big game and say, we'll do this for you, but they also set ads up and don't touch them, and the algorithms change, right? So Google's algorithms change, Facebook, you know, it's constantly evolving. And so if you're not keeping an eye on, are we continuing to shift our messaging and even shift our strategy in a way that is continuing to bring the best results possible, the most efficient use of ad dollars? Ad dollars are precious. And you know, every CEO or business leader that I work with that immediately starts asking about ROI is somebody that I want to work with, right? Because I don't want somebody that just says, here's my budget, I know we have to be on these channels, just put some stuff up there. You should want to know what's converting and what's working. And that's one of the things that I think is so great about our process. One of the other things I'll say quickly is that I think what we found, Lauren, I know you and I have talked about this a lot, is that people that we worked with have started at one step of this process and not necessarily been aware that the other steps even existed, right? So, you know, we've had people that have started with the content, right? And I always say, you can have the best content in the world out there, but if you don't have any traffic that you're driving to it and no one's seeing it, it doesn't matter how great your content is. So spending thousands of dollars on really excellent creative content creation is worthless if nobody's looking at it. So not thinking of that next step about how do you get the content there and the traffic to that content is really a huge hiccup for folks. But then on the other end, I've seen folks that you know, start with SEO. They're like, great, I know we've got to do search engine optimization. I've heard this buzzword. That's awesome. I want to throw all this money towards Google Ads. And then they don't do the work to figure out, well, what's my identity? And you know, who am I trying to reach? And it's just drive people to my website. Well, great. If they get to the website and they don't find what they need, or they don't find what they're really looking for, then that's also a huge waste of money. So what I love about our process is that even if these businesses, these clients of ours have been in business for years, we're going back to that identity-based strategy and catching them up and starting there because it's building on a strong foundation. And I'm really adamant that we try not to start driving traffic before we've done that process, because I have learned from you just how important both personally and professionally it is to really get to the heart of that identity-based strategy. And if you don't build it on that strong foundation, everything that you do is going to be a waste of money, or at least not an efficient use of it.
So true. That's so great. And so, you know, to speak to that, Jean, what we've been able to do with the clients is not the set it and forget it approach, but build in monthly audit processes to the marketing engine. So any of the clients in the marketing engine, you know, we're reviewing the dashboard of all the analytics, comparing it to the personas and saying, okay, what does this look like? Are they converting? Do we have enough traffic? Is the messaging reaching the personas, right? All of those things. And then knowing what tweaks need to be made on a monthly basis. So it's just a really intentional process. That's what I love about this. It's just the intentionality that's built into it, you know, with this. partnership with the three of us. So we're just really excited about it. I'm going to drop a link to the landing page in the show notes in case you guys want more info, and also my email so that you can email me if you have any questions or want more information on it. Jean, any other tangible takeaways or just tips, things they could do right now as you wrap up today?
Sure. And I'm sure you're not going to be surprised to hear me say this, but retention is my passion, right?
Yeah.
So in the nonprofit world, that's stewardship. In the for-profit or, business world, that's retention. And I always like to share with people that it is easier for you to increase your business or increase your gifts from people that are already plugged in with you than it is to acquire a new customer or a new donor. And I think that's another real key missing piece for organizations and businesses, is to always be thinking about acquisition and not be spending enough time thinking about retention. So my quick tangible tip is to, take an hour this week to sit down and look at your retention practices, whether that's sending notes of gratitude for them being plugged in with your organization or company, whether that's asking them to help through some of these exercises like the website exercise Lauren previously mentioned. I mean, those are great ways to make donors and customers feel valued, is to ask them and bring them into your process. But I think being really, really intentional, we call these retargeting campaigns or remarketing campaigns, but being really intentional about retaining the customers that you have and making them feel special and valued. That's oftentimes a piece that I don't think we spend enough time on.
Yes, that's so true. And just re-engagement to the clients that may not be active with you or may not have bought but interested. It's a lot easier to convert those leads than it is to convert new traffic as well. So prioritizing in terms of that. So Jean, thank you so much for being on. This was so great. And I know it was so valuable for our listeners.
Thanks for having me.